Most High put together. We gon' see. In times.
Serpents lurking, watchers watching, y'all sure I'll stay on point.
They lurking.
We under the covenant, we ain't got no other choice. Gird your loins up, armor up, cause it's time for war. We the generation that's gon' get on one accord. Serpents lurking, watchers watching, y'all sure I'll stay on point.
Got real
We
now.
under the covenant, we ain't got no other choice. Gird your loins up, armor up, cause it's time for war.
Shalom, shalom to all. It's your fellow brother, Will, son of Yah. And today we will begin a journey in which we will seek the legacy of the Israelite diaspora within Africa. Now, these Israelites made their way into Africa from various captivities, uprisings, and wars in the ancient Near East and North Africa. It was sub-Saharan Africa that acted as a place of refuge, and even up until today, we are able to see their Israelite origins reflected through their oral traditions, customs, and much, much more. But for now, let's dig into the migratory history of the African Israelite diaspora. So to begin our journey, we shall begin in the land of Israel, the land of Canaan. This is the land that was allotted to the 12 tribes of Israel, and the land that they were scattered from, starting with the earliest dispersals in 722 BCE by the Assyrian Empire. In fact, some Africans have ancient Jewish heritage and consider themselves descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. Around 926 BCE, the kingdom of Israel split into two. Previously, all 12 tribes of Israel had been united under the monarchies of Saul, David, and Solomon. But when Solomon's son, Rehoboam, acceded to the throne, the 10 northern tribes rebelled and seceded from the union. This only left 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, under the control of the king in Jerusalem. From that time on, the tribes were divided into 2 nations, which came to be called the House of Israel, or the 10 northern tribes, and the house of Judah, or the 2 southern tribes. When the Assyrians conquered the house of Israel around 722 BCE, they deported the native populations to other places throughout the Assyrian kingdom. Many Israelites made their way across the Silk Road, ending up in Asia and Africa, where they intermarried with the peoples among whom they settled. They eventually abandoned their distinct identity and culture that was lost to history. These are the groups referred to as the lost tribes of Israel. So when it comes to those Israelites scattered by the Assyrian kings, there are many claims and theories of where they ended up settling. Some suggest they made their way into Asia or Europe or even the Americas before assimilating into the native populations. But is there any evidence for an African migration? I am of the belief that after various waves and migrations from the Near East, Israelites and Judeans made their way into Africa, later penetrating the Sahara with their superior iron weaponry, taking over whatever land they felt was plentiful and best fit for their agricultural way of life. But is there any evidence to support this claim? Actually, existing research shows that over the centuries, while Jews migrated north, east, and west, they also went south throughout Africa. Pressed under regional sweeping conflicts, Jews settled as traders and warriors in Yemen, the Horn of Africa, Egypt, the Kingdom of Kush and Nubia, North African Punic settlements such as Carthage and Volubilis, and now areas covered by Mauritania. More immigrants followed these early Jewish settlers to northern Africa, following the Assyrian conquest of the Israelites in the 8th century BCE, and again 200 years later when Jerusalem was conquered by the Babylonians, leading to the destruction of the First Temple. The Jewish presence in Africa began to expand significantly in the 2nd and 3rd centuries of the Christian era, extending not only into the Sahara Desert, but also reaching down along the West African coast, and possibly also to some Bantu tribes in southern Africa. In addition, Jewish, Arab, and Christian accounts cite the existence of Jewish rulers of certain tribal groups and clans identifying themselves as Jewish scattered throughout Mauritania, Senegal, the Western Sudan, Nigeria, and Ghana. The African story parallels that of other Jewish groups throughout the diaspora. In Africa, as in other places around the world, there are long-standing communities with greater or lesser degrees of continuous practice, depending on how safe they were. These are those who have Jewish heritage and now practice other religions, either through assimilation or through forced conversions. Some may live as Christians or Muslims and have little sense of their Jewish past. However, others live as Christians or Muslims, yet are proud of their Jewish ancestry. There are also those who discovered Judaism and decided to convert to Judaism. These are more recent newcomers to the Jewish people. Whether ancient or new, a distinctive trait of African communities result from historical isolation from rabbinical Judaism. Their Judaism has either been passed on through oral tradition or is practiced as pre-Talmudic Torah-based Judaism. These communities would like to be a part of world Judaism. First thing we shall do is gain a scriptural understanding of the events that led to those deportations of the northern tribes of Israel.
Chapter 17.
In the 12th year of Ahaz king of Judah began Hoshea the son of Elah to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant, and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up, and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria, and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea the king of Assyria took Samaria, and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes.
Now, after reviewing those scriptures, we should have an idea of who took Israel and where they were deported to. Now let's trace those migrations back westward to Africa from the first captivity. And to do that, we're going to begin with the oral traditions of Eldad the Danite. These traditions are important because they recant one of the earliest Israelite diasporas known throughout all of Jewish history. It was even written in the Talmudic writings. So let's deal with the history of Eldad ben Mali. The oral traditions of Eldad begins in the land of Israel during the time of Jeroboam's succession and the time of the split of the kingdom of Israel. Specifically, during this time, King Jeroboam wanted the Danites to make war against the tribes of Judah. However, instead of shedding blood against their brother and making war against their brother, they proclaimed throughout all the land of Dan to fly to Egypt and kill all the inhabitants of Egypt. But how could you fly to Egypt? Asked one of the princes. Is it not written throughout the law that ye shall see them again no more? However, it is said that God gave the Danites good advice to go up the river Pishon and to continue their wanderings on camels and to encamp into the land of Cush. After growing plentiful year after year, it is said that 3 other tribes, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, came and encamped with the Danites within the land of Cush. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to this story and this history, many authors and historians fail to continue the story of Eldad falling short within the boundaries of Cush. But indeed, we can go further west. So let's dig into that. Now to do that, we'll be looking into the French source Relation d'Eldad le Danite to get some further insight, because interestingly, they go deeper into this history. We'll be beginning on page 28, and everything we'll be reading from specifically will be highlighted to the left, and the translation will be to the right. So, beginning on page 28, it reads, "At that time, several families of 3 other tribes of Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali also went out and encamped in Arabia until they reached the borders of Cush. They made war on the Cushites and killed so many that they depopulated a space of 4 days by 4 days to the place occupied by their brothers of the race of Dan, having chosen Havilah as his home, which should not be confused with the eastern Havilah, where there is gold, and Seba, and Sabta, and Ramah, and Sabat Cha, and Sheba, and Dedan. These 4 tribes, Dan, Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali, were forced to fight against these 7 kingdoms." Page 29. "Soon they made the heads of their enemies bow before them, and established themselves in their places in these 7 kingdoms. Nevertheless, every year until today, they are in hostility with 7 other tribes, forming as many sovereignties, called Thamani, Kabar, Koratia, Bedra, Nabat, Aur, and Yoba. As a result of these continuous wars, many Israelites were scattered beyond the rivers of Cush, so that the word of the prophet would be fulfilled. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my scattered worshippers will bring me my offering." So thus far, after reading this book, we've gained insight on the fact that 4 tribes, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, made their way into the land of Cush before continuing beyond the rivers of Ethiopia into a land known as Havilah. And they said specifically not to be confused with the eastern Havilah. So if not the eastern Havilah, then where is the Havilah that Eldad was making mention to? Interestingly, if we take a look into the book, The Itinerary of Rabbi Benjamin of Tudela, he mentions something very, very similar that connects to what Eldad was claiming. So if we start on page 146, it reads, "From Aswan to Chula, 12 days. This place contains about 300 Jews and is the starting point of the caravans who transverse the desert Al-Tahara or Al-Sahara in 50 days on their way to Zavilah, the Chavilah of Scripture, which is in the country of Ghana." So interestingly, Rabbi Tudela says that this Chavilah or Savila or Havilah is in the country of Ghana. And we know that this is specifically in West Africa and not in East Africa, because on page 146, he goes on to say that this country lies westward of Cush or Abyssinia. But let's dig deeper into that. And to do that, we're going to go to Archives Moroccains, Volume 6. On page 68, it mentions something very, very interesting. It says quite simply that Eldad calls Negritia by the name of Havilah. And last time I checked, Negritia is the name of West Africa. So we actually have 2 Jewish historians, Rabbi Benjamin as well as Eldad the Danite, placing Havilah within West Africa. Is this because places like Ghana is referenced as the land of gold as well? But let's continue to dig into this history. And to do that, we're going to try to identify one more location that Eldad made mention to, and that is the Sambatyon River. So let's go to a history of the Jewish people to get a little bit more information on the details surrounding this Sambonyon River. Starting on page 278, it reads, Eldad, son of Mali the Danite, alleged that he was a descendant of the tribe of Dan. He related that this tribe had immigrated from their Palestinian home so as not to take part in the civil war at that time of Jerusalem's secession. And were residing in the land of Havilah beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. 3 other tribes, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, were with them. These had joined them in the times of Sennacherib. Opposite them lived the children of Moses, sprung from those Levites who had mutilated the fingers of their right hand rather to sing the songs of Zion by the rivers of Babylon, and had then been translated by a cloud to their present abode. His own people, so Eldad continued, were able to communicate with them only from afar, since they were cut off from one another by a waterless torrent which carried masses of sand and rubble with such terrific force that it could crush an iron mountain. This impassable river rested on the Sabbath day when it was enveloped in a thick mist. Hence the river was named Sambonyon. Now after reading this, a river didn't necessarily pop up in my head. Now let's reread over these details to get an understanding of exactly what Eldad was talking about. It says, his own people, so Eldad continued, were able to communicate with them only from afar, since they were cut off from one another by a waterless torrent which carried masses of sand and rubble with such terrific force that it could crush an iron mountain. This impassable river rested on the Sabbath day when it was enveloped in a thick mist. Hence, the river was named Sambonyon. So after reading this again, it really sounds as if Eldad was describing a desert. If we go back to the itinerary of Rabbi Benjamin of Tudela, he describes the Sahara Desert that the Jews traverse the same way Eldad described the Sambonyon River. And it reads, from Aswan to Chula, 12 days. This place contains about 300 Jews and is the starting point of the caravans who traverse the desert Al Tahara in 50 days on their way to Sevilla, the Chavila of Scripture, which is in the country of Ghana. This desert contains mountains of sand, and whenever a storm arises, the caravans are exposed to the imminent danger of being buried alive by the sand. Alright, so now we're starting to see why Eldad described the Sahara Desert as a waterless torrent which carried masses of sand and rubble. Let's continue on to the empires of medieval West Africa, because this complements the traditions of Eldad as well. And it reads, on the southern fringe of the Sahara is the Sahel, a marginal area of transition from desert to savanna. Sahel is the Arabic word for shore. It is as if the Sahara were a great ocean of sand and rock. The camels that transport goods across the desert were ships, and the large market towns were the seaports. Alright, so now we should definitely have an understanding of why Eldad referred to this desert, this Sahara, as a great ocean of sand and rock, as a waterless torrent. So now that we went through that information, let's go even deeper into proving that West Africa was the location of Eldad and his tribesmen. And to do that, we're going to visit another French source by the title of Archives Marocains, Volume 6. Starting on page 67, it reads, Eldad the Danite appeared in the cities of the coast of the Maghreb around 860 to 880. He had come from the desert, from Sudan or Nigritia, and claimed to belong to the independent Jewish tribes of the Danites, one of the 10 extinct tribes of Israel, which he said had immigrated from Ethiopia or Nigritia. He spoke only Hebrew, but a special Hebrew, a dialect which differs from all that we know of this language and which could be linked to the Hebrew Phoenician. Apart from the Danites, his own tribe, they were in Nigritia, according to him. 3 other tribes of Israel, enjoying all them a considerable political and material prosperity and making war on the Negro kingdoms situated in the desert and separated from the Israelites by a sabbatical river which drew during the week streams of sand and stone. Continuing on to the footnotes of page 67, it reads, the tribes of Dan would have come to Ethiopia from Egypt, while the 3 other Jewish tribes of Nigritia, those of Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, would have come from Arabia, which confirms the hypothesis put forward by Mr. Lee Chandler on the origins of Jews in West Africa. Continuing on. It is difficult not to see in all this information, which is both reality and legend, data on the migrations of the Judaizing and Libo-Punic tribes driven back by the Muslims as far as the ocean and from there to the Sudan. Indeed, the existence of the Jewish independence in the Sahara around the 9th and 1st centuries is confirmed by the traditions of Kitab el-Adunai that we have already mentioned, as well as certain indications of other Arab historians, the most important of which is that of Qatar's. Continuing on to page 71, it reads, Eldad certainly visited certain Jewish tribes in the Sahara. He has heard many things said of certain others. He knows its uses and beliefs to the point that Mr. Epstein has succeeded in identifying them with those of the Phalashas, whose common Hellenic origin with the ancient warriors of Caesarenica had been supposed by us. It is also possible that he confused the Bene Musa with the powerful tribe of Masai, which he may have not have visited himself, since we have managed to identify most of the names of Negro kingdoms with geographical names of the Adrar region of French Mauritania and even of Western Sudan. We would therefore not follow Mr. Epstein when he refuses to admit that West Africa was the country of origin of the Danite.
Say, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
So wait 1 second. You mean to tell me that authors actually refuse to admit that West Africa was the country of origin of Eldad the Danite and his tribesmen? Is this why throughout history we always see this story referring to Ethiopian Jews opposed to West African? But let's continue to bring out this groundbreaking information and show where Eldad and his Israelite relatives settled within West Africa. Reading from page 71, it reads, we will devote a separate study to it among the geographical names given by Eldad and often manipulated by the copyists. We thought we could identify a certain number, of which here are a few: Adrar or Adrar, Todima or Kadima, Kukia, Kautu or Kumtu, Toreka or Tekror, Tukulur, Kuba or Kechi, Karma or Kartas, and additionally, let us point out the names of Hohom and Zomaron, which we find in southern Morocco. Now let me read over those names one more time, just in case these locations went over your head. It reads, locations such as Adrar, Todima or Kadima, Kukuya, Kautu or Kumtu, Toreka or Tukor, Tukulur, Kuba or Kechi, Karma or Kartas, and additionally Hohom and Zomaron in southern Morocco. So these West African territories is where these northern tribes settled and formed a kingdom, according to Eldad. Even if we continue, we'll find something else that's very confirming. And it reads, it must be added to this information that Eldad the Danite had been accompanied in his travels by another Jew of the desert, who had traced his origin to the tribe of Asher, son of Jacob, or among the Mandi or Suniki tribes, of which some trace their origins to the chiefs of the tribes of Israel.
Fast forward to 800 AD, Eldad the Danite. Remember El? I just want to say this is Hidden Ones, part 26b, not Hidden Hebrews. I'm sorry about that. In the 9th century, a black African Hebrew arrived in the city of Kar-o-an in Algeria, and this city was one of the famous Talmudic schools. The name of this Hebrew was Eldad the Danite. He told a credible story of a Hebrew empire south of the Sahara in the western Sudan. According to Eldad the Danite, the Hebrews in the interior of Africa spoke a Phoenician Hebraic language mixed with Arabic. Remember, Negro land is what? South of the Sahara desert. They had a religion which had come down from Moses and a Hebrew emperor. It was believed that this emperor was named Tloutan or Boulatan. Eldad said that the people of this tribe had fled from the kingdom of Israel after Sennacherib. Remember Sennacherib? The Assyrian had subdued it, and that other Israelite tribes such as Naphtali, Gad, and Asher were in the land from which he came. He told of the laws of Moses which they followed, the complete series of the scriptures except Esther and Lamentation. He did not speak of the legal works that were produced in Babylon and Palestine after the destruction of the first temple, of which the Algerian Jews had a knowledge. These extraordinary works were the Mishna and the Talmud. Eldad displayed as evidence some ceremony pertaining to the slaughtering of animals for food. It was written in Hebrew with an Arabic tinge, but Eldad claimed that he knew no other language than Hebrew. In regard to the Eldad story, the Gaon, head of the Jews, assured the people that the story was credible. You do your own due diligence and don't just take my word for it. At this time, Gao or Gagho, the capital of Ghana, was separated into two cities. The first one was the residence of the king. This city contained a fortress which was surrounded by a wall. The second city contained 12 mosques in which the Mohammedan merchants could settle or wait until they transacted their business. This description given by El-Burki leaves us with the impression that the city of the king's residence was probably inhabited mainly by Jews, because there was a great distinction between the king's residence and the residence of the Mohammedans. In the city of Gal, the Islamic religion was influential. Only a Muslim could be king. When a new king ascended the throne, three royal imperial emblems constituting the Quran, a sword, and a ring were received by the king. Ahmad Baba, a native of Songhai, dates the beginning of Islam in Ghana after the year 1010. Now we have a rise of a king who is not Hebrew. All right. Mansa Musa. What people don't know is that Mansa Musa oppressed the Hebrews. The Empire of Mali is also called the Palestine Empire. The word Mali is derived from a Mandingo grammatical root meaning free. The rulers and the people of the Empire of Mali were black Africans of the Mandingo tribe. The tribe was originally situated in a territory known today as Guinea, Sierra Leone, and northward. On the banks of the upper Niger near the present-day Sierra Leone, the Mandingos established their capital at a place called Niamey. After the breakup of the Ghanaian Empire by invasions from many tribes, Ghana split apart into a number of states, but in the capital of Ghana, Gao, the Hebrew Zah kings continued to reign. Many people who were subject to Ghana proclaimed their independence after the Chows set in. The most celebrated of these people were the Mandingos, who established the nucleus of a new empire about the middle of the 13th century, 1240 AD. There are several important factors that we must consider in order to comprehend the rise of Mali. First of all, Mali had received an impetus or a moving force and significant influence from her predecessor Ghana to the north. This influence can be explained in political, economic, and religious ways. The Muslim merchants of the north and Sierra had their trading centers in the cities of Ghana. The Mandingo traders of Mali traded with the Muslims in those days, and to some extent today, commerce and religion have operated together. The Mandingo merchants recognized the advantages of the rapidly growing, powerful, influential cultural and religion of Muslims in the north. As a result, the Mandingo merchants played a great part in the transportation of Islam to their people. The Mandingos were a successful agricultural people. They were blessed with the availability of rivers, which they used for irrigation. They grew rice and other staples, which contributed to a rapidly growing population. The people of Mali had enough grain to sell to the people of Sierra and the north, or Sahara. They developed market towns, which later grew into cities and states. With their trading abilities, their skills, and vigorous energy, Davison said the Mandingos became rich. Davison continued with the collapse of Ghana. The Mandingos became rich. Davison continued with the collapse of Ghana as an empire. Their chance of large political power was open. They grasped it with a sure hand. Almost 100 years after the death of Sundiata, a powerful king emerged in Mali. His name was Mansa Musa. During his lifetime, 1312 to 1337, his accomplishments transcended his predecessors. His empire extended from east to west, beginning at the Atlantic Ocean to northern modern Nigeria, and from north to south, reaching almost from central Mauritania and extending to the borders of modern Guinea and Ivory Coast. In 1326 AD, Mansa Musa made a pilgrimage to Mecca, the holy city of the Mohammedans. It is said that He exhibited a marvelous splendor that astonished the spectators. He arrived in East with thousands of foot soldiers and over 60,000 mounted warriors. In addition to his soldiers, he had 500 slaves, each carrying a rod of gold weighing 6 pounds. As a contribution to the holy cities, he gave 20,000 pieces of gold. Mali in its heyday was known for its prosperity and peace. Within the empire existed one pervading system of law, order, and justice. When the emperor Ken Khan Musa was on the pilgrimage in Arabia, Saga Mandur, the general of Mali, took Gao, the capital of Ghana, or Songhai. Then Ken Khan Musa returned from Arabia by way of Gao. Now we're talking about Mansa Musa, and accepted the capitulation of the king of Ghana and its nobles. Philip St. Laurent, who writes a monthly article on African history, See Tuesday magazine from the Philadelphia Bulletin, says that the soldiers of Mali were made prisoners of the ruling family of Dia Sobia. This was the Za Hebrew dynasty. Among these prisoners were Ali Cologne or Kilun and his brother Salamar Nar, the sons of Za Yezibi. These Hebrew princes were appointed as pages at the court of Mali about 1335 AD. In the meantime, Gao was subjugated under the Mali political system, says Davidson, and Mansa Khan Musa exacted tribute from its rulers. It was not too long before the princes of Za dynasty escaped from the court and army of Mali. They organized an army and fought the king of Mali. Ali Cologne entertained a profound hatred against Mali conquerors because they had subjugated his people. Remember, I said Ali Cologne was Hebrew. Again, Ali Cologne entertained a profound hatred against Mali conquerors because they had subjugated his people. In the latter part of the 14th century, the army of Ali Cologne, later called Soni the Liberator, Ali, made attacks on Niana, the capital of Mali, or Niani. Yearning for independence, Soni Ali desisted in paying tribute to Mali. Because of the exploits of Sani Ali, the Za dynasty of Gao acquired a new affiliation. The dynasty after Soni Ali one is called the Soni or Shi dynasty. There were about 17 or 18 Islamic Hebrew kings in this dynasty. So again, that was excerpts from the book Babylon to Timbuktu. If you are listening to this and you don't know Yahushua as your savior, click the link in the description box. I tell you how to get saved. Have a good day.
He gon' send his hand. Destruction gotta come, that's how he get us out this lane. The devil working hard, trying to get us out his plane. His sheep hear his voice, so he can't get us out his hand. We gon' trust the Son of Man, blow your wings, Father. Your kingdom coming, we just trying to make it in, Father. Rather we